If you could please help me in welcoming to the stage for a fireside chat called From Minister to Ambassador, Digital Assets, Institutional Adoption, AI times Blockchain, and Finance on the World Stage. Please welcome Ms. Clara Chappaz and Henri Delahaye.
Hello, Clara. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, Clara, you're a new ambassador for the French government, as briefly and well explained by our master of ceremonies this morning. So maybe can you walk the audience, what is the difference between being a minister and an ambassador for the French government? And what is the difference of the scope and...
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to give a general answer, but applied to what we're here gathered today. Basically, when I was a Minister of AI and Technologies, when we talked about blockchain, my day would go from trying and helping a company getting a license agreement to explaining the regulation and campaigning in Europe to take example onto what we've built in France to have a European framework to really go around and try and attract investors to join the scene here in France. As an ambassador, I'm now basically doing the diplomacy when it comes to those topics of technology. And when it comes to this field, what's been very interesting and actually a real asset to us is that I can use everything we've built nationally to showcase how we can try and build an ecosystem. And what's been very interesting about it is that when you think about it, the fact that we've been invested for that long with the first pact law, creating the framework we've built upon in Europe later on, has given this consistency that becomes a real asset when it comes to diplomacy. So my role now is to go around the world and try and showcase this is a vision that France has on technology. And when it comes to those technologies we're all gathered to talk about today, really trying to show that you can build value by having a consistent framework, consistent rules. Obviously, that's not enough. We don't want to be only a rule market, but trying to assess how this market can be organized and trying to do that at a global stage is, I think, the value I see in the role I'm having today.
Okay, fantastic. And for everyone in the audience, we were talking with Clara just before the, obviously, like the conversation we're having right now, and the ambassador was in Korea, Japan, and in the US in the last 2 weeks. What is the view of Korea, Japan, and the US on France and Europe on digital assets, adoption, institutions, willingness to enter the space?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, we live in a very turbulent world. There's not a single day where we wake up and we really know how the day is going to turn. And in this world, as President Macron stated it in Japan, basically, there's one asset that is probably undervalued. It's consistency and ability to create predictability. And in a way, I mean, there's a lot you can say about Europe. Europe is sometimes too slow. I'm not going to give you a for sure, but you're seeing where I'm going. But looking around and looking back at Europe from all those places in the world, I think gives us a very ultimate advantage, which is to say we do what we say, and we are where you're expected us to be. And that in this world is really a key benefit when it comes to building our partnerships with our country. We've talked a lot about digital sovereignty, and that is something that maybe there's a bit of a misconception around. Digital sovereignty is not about saying, oh, we're only going to do stuff ourselves and we're going to build it ourselves, which is sometimes a favorite way of going forward that Europeans have invented, especially when the administration starts to build stuff themselves. But that doesn't mean that. That means creating the conditions for companies to thrive and build alternative here in Europe that are necessary when we're talking about all the disruption that we're seeing in the industry. And doing this not only in Europe, but doing it with like-minded partners. So when we go to Japan, when we go to Korea, we are basically reaching to those partners and saying, hey, how do we do more together? Because sovereignty is not about closing doors, it's about building partnerships with like-minded countries that we just offer alternatives. And when it comes to the industry that we're talking about today, I mean, everyone knows that better than I do. 85% of the global stablecoin market is dollar-dominated, including reserves. If we are serious about this technology and its potential, what we're trying to do when we are talking about digital sovereignty is finding those like-minded countries to not only build the solutions, but also build the independence that these solutions can bring us. And so looking at ways to, give more confidence to the private sector, the public sector, so that we can build alternatives that is not going to only serve the American debt market is something that we can only do when we put countries together. And that's basically how we can reduce those dependencies that we've already created with the current financial system. And it's not abstract. I mean, it's very concrete. And we're not the only one facing this situation. So that's why we need to do it together with our friends. That's why diplomacy is needed, to engage with those countries who are facing the same dependencies, are facing the same vulnerabilities, because I don't think we needed that in France to completely understand the impact of being dependent on technology and the vulnerabilities it brings. Because President Macron has been talking about that since his very first speech about Europe in 2017. But probably the global context today is make it very, very concrete how technologies are the heart of strategic autonomy. It's not just about defense. Obviously, it's a lot about defense, but it's not just about defense. It's also about recognizing that if we are not able to build our own infrastructure when it comes to the digital economy, then we are dependent. And being dependent, being in this world, we're vulnerable. And so, that's where the European Union needs to bring more solutions than just regulatory framework. And I'm sure we're going to talk about that. I think what we've done in France and that was pushed at the European level with MiCA is great. But if we're only building the infrastructure, if we're only building the stadium, but we're not playing inside the stadium, probably we're not going to win the race. So that's also why we're reaching out to all those countries to say, hey, let's get our companies to work together. Let's get the scale at which we can have real leaders, because we don't want to build a stadium. We want to win the match. And to do that, we need to do everything we can to make it as attractive as possible for all players to play the game in Europe and to partner and get basically the best players all around the world, like-minded players, to come here and do stuff together. So that's how I see my role today.
Super insightful. Thank you, Madam the Ambassador. I have a quick question on, so as of today, MiCA is live. Were you very surprised as being an ambassador and not a minister anymore on the alignment at the EU level of all the ambassadors and ministers on MiCA adoption, which players should be onboarded, and also like maybe seeing international players willing to enter the EU market on the MiCA framework or level?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk to the players, I mean, first, your question on how was it easy for France to bring their own perspective to Europe? I think that's something that I really want to highlight, the roles that every minister in this country has had for the last 10 years, first trying to build a framework nationally, but then realizing and recognizing that this doesn't make sense until it's a European framework. I'm thinking about the role that Bruno Le Maire played, for example, in this field, which was very important with PACT national law. And so the idea that this had to be European from the get-go, I think, was the right insight. And bringing on board all the European countries has been definitely a big role that everyone has played in this country, and is obviously very positive. And I think when you talk to the players, and many companies are in this room, I hear that having a framework that is understandable, the same, certain, all around Europe is definitely an asset. Of course, I mean, the big elephant in the room is how the US has turned upside down over the last year or something now, and revisited the way they approach the field and this technology. But I also do hear that a certain level of certainty, predictability that the European market offers is welcome by companies, especially in this field and in this sector, because it's built on trust. You can't build this sector for real if you don't have trust. So I do think that in this world, the European framework is an asset, but doesn't mean, again, we can be complacent and think, oh, yeah, let's cheer up. We have the best regulatory framework in the world. Actually, even the US is looking at it and trying to emulate it. But that's not enough, again, organizing ourselves to be able to have companies flourish, making sure that, and it's always the same thing with Europe, we have great frameworks, but then the implementation, the speed at which we're able to deliver the licenses, for example, is absolutely critical, because the day and the time and the energy and the money that companies are going to spend going through those processes is not the money and time they're invested on building the best products in the world, and we need the best products. So everything we can do to really recognize where we can be more agile, where we can be faster, where we can help and support companies better is definitely something that is also in our field of responsibility, because we want to be the leaders in the race, not just again building the frameworks only.
So I remember last year the two of us were on stage, and what really struck the audience and also myself, you talked about the convergence between AI and blockchain, and under your initiative you opened the door of crypto mining, Bitcoin mining using French nuclear energy. I mean, I'm sure the audience is aware, but France had a pretty unique positioning with having 6 gigawatts of energy surplus output per year, which is unique in the world, and also fueling the BPI through the French sovereign fund digital asset new vehicle. So do you have the same stance today after being an ambassador in a diplomatic seat?
That one thing that still amazes me when I go around the world is I don't think everyone has fully realized yet how much value there is in this country when it comes to the topics we're talking about, and when it comes to all the limits that we're seeing worldwide, energy being like one of the big limits that obviously we all need to face and address. And that being said, France last year, as you rightly said, exported the equivalent of the entire Belgium consumption, 93 terawatt-hours of nuclear energy, which not only is stable, but is also green, by the way, exported it abroad. So we do have this asset, which is an amazing value. And everywhere I go in the world, I also sometimes feel like I'm, here to cheer up and sell the assets of my country, which is definitely part of my role today. I keep on having this conversation where once in a while there's someone being like, oh, really? I didn't know that about France. So I'm like, okay, we need to say it again and again and again. But yeah, I mean, this is definitely central. And to your point about our conversation last year, I mean, I definitely continue to stand by it. When you're thinking about AI, and I think you probably know, or I'm happy to share how much France has invested into science, into research, into compute facilities, into the ecosystem to be one of the alternative centers for AI in the world. You're thinking as well about traceability, about transparency. One of the topics we've been very engaged as a country on is how to protect children better online. This is a question, that needs to come up with a question of traceability online. Identifying the age of the user is one of the big problems in the world, that we can go around as politicians saying, hey, we want to protect children. But if we don't invest into the technologies that allow us to know if you're below or above 15, I'm not sure. And then doing this in a zero-knowledge, badge-proof way that also protects their privacy, and then we're fooling ourselves. So obviously the two are very intertwined, and the convergence isn't incidental. I mean, it's definitely structural. And so that's why for us it was very important to make sure that everything you're doing, bringing people that are working on those technologies here in Paris, is also, bringing in, building bridges with the AI scene in Paris, which is absolutely booming and doing an amazing work.
And so you rightfully underline the fact that energy and compute in the AI space, but also in the blockchain space, is a bottleneck. And so do you think sometimes like the French people are a bit too pessimistic, not realizing this extraordinary asset, which is energy? And when you are in Japan and Korea, I'm pretty sure that the economic actors, the government is extremely paranoid about that limit?
I don't think French people are negative about that. I think it's our role to market it better.
Okay.
Not to necessarily inward. I think we are very lucky. We have amazing companies we've been building in the field and creating this trust about this energy that we don't necessarily see worldwide. So this is also an asset. We've done it in a way that has brought our citizens together. But going around and looking at ways we can partner, I'm thinking, for example, Ledger and EDF are building a partnership right now, just showing that those big historic companies can also have avenues to work with much more innovative companies, and doing that here in that country because we have this asset with nuclear energy and nuclear power is something that uniquely positioned us in the world. I mean, everywhere in the world, someone is trying to find out how to get more energy. The energy is here, the companies are here, the grid is also very stable. So the word we need to bring out, I think, even more is let's go and build stuff together. On the 1st of June, we have Choose France, which is always a big event where a lot of private investors, foreign investors are coming to the country and unveiling new projects. I can only encourage those investors to go around and work with the companies that are gathered here, because there's so much we can do together if we build like our historical assets, energy, and the innovative power of those companies together. So there's definitely a lot we can do, that I think a lot of countries in the world are quite jealous about.
Thank you so much, Clara. I think we're running a bit out of time. But again, a very big thank you for your support, I mean, unconditional support from day one, and really bringing together the international community here in Paris at Paris Blockchain Week and Ray Summit. So thank you a lot, Clara.
I might end with one thing. Sorry. France is hosting G7 presidency this year. And this is actually a big deal for diplomacy. So everything we can do during this year, and this event is definitely part of it, gathering people from all around the world and building, building bridges between the public sector, financial institution, the innovators, and doing this in a way that you're doing it here, which means being very concrete, is really welcome. So thanks to you for contributing to making, in a way, G7 presidency a success. And everything you're discussing here, I mean, count on me to make sure we have an avenue to embark all those discussions within the G7, because this is also definitely our goal, our objective, and our responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Madame the Ambassador. See you at the J7.
Welcome to Signal Week.